What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Hopefully everyone's having a great day because the NFL draft is literally right around the corner. We've waited for a long, long time, and we just have to wait about 24 hours, depending on when you're watching this, for the draft to come, and then we will no longer be guessing. No more mock drafts, no more rumors. We will just have players on teams, and we can start rocking and rolling for OTAs and get on the field at least in shorts and t-shirts. Today, I'm going to kind of do an NFL rapid fire. We had a lot of news breaking all over the league. Purdy, George Kittle, one of them showed, one of them did not to the offseason. Devante Adams had some comments in regards to the 49ers' pursuit of him in free agency. The Titans brass spoke about their intentions coming up on Thursday. Chris Ballard had a comment from the other day that I haven't had a chance to touch on. Peter Schrager breaking some news about potential trades because we haven't had any for the first time since like 1993. But yeah, a lot going on football wise. We will keep you covered here. So let's dive into football. But before we do that, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, the official ticketing app of this podcast. I wish I lived in Washington because I would go to some Washington Capitol hockey games. They're my squad. Got a little DraftKings, little wager on them to win the Stanley Cup. Hockey games, the playoffs look like so much fun. And if you get the opportunity to go to one of these games, I would not hesitate. Obviously, baseball's in full swing. You got the NBA playoffs. You got concert season, which is basically here. Comedy shows. You want to do something fun. You want to go enjoy your life. Sometimes you got to get out of the house. Sometimes you got to take your wife, your girlfriend, a close relative, maybe a mom or dad, maybe your son or daughter, and just go hit the town, whether that's a concert, whether that's a game, and go enjoy yourself. And do it because my friends that help you take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets. Lowest prices guaranteed. The 49ers, they made some news today because their general manager, John Lynch, Hall of Fame safety, spoke. And he let us know that Brock Purdy is in attendance. And that's where I want to start. And these holdouts, these hold-ins, have become pretty consistent in the NFL. The amount of money that guys are scheduled to make, whether you're a linebacker, a wide receiver, a pass rusher, or an offensive lineman, has never been more. Obviously, these quarterbacks now, a low-level quarterback deal pays $100 million guaranteed. You saw Sam Darnold get 55 guaranteed based on one really good season after an awful start to his career. You've seen guys like Geno Smith get huge extension after huge extension, and he was a lifetime backup relative to these guys that were scratching their head, just like, you gave Tua what? Jordan Love had 8 good games, and he got like $175 million. Tua Tagovailoa, you saw Trevor Lawrence. We don't even know if he's a good player, and he got $200 million guaranteed. There's a ton of money on the line. And I totally understand it. I've always supported a player when you're talking, you could be talking 40, 50, $60 million guaranteed, let alone 100 million plus. The moment you get on the field in an OTA situation, in a training camp situation, injuries can be out of your control. Someone falling on your leg, you tripping and falling, you planning the wrong way, and it can get yourself into a situation where you're injured. Listen, it's a cutthroat league. There's a reason we call it not for long. You will be thrown in the trash with a quickness. And anytime you have a chance to make that much money at a young age, I totally understand and support people making business decisions because we all do it in our walk of life. Obviously, for 99.9% of us, we are not talking 100, 150, $200 million, but you got to fight for yourself. And you have to be, you have to have a cold-blooded, cold-hearted streak in any industry when it comes to money, because that's the way this world operates, specifically in this country. But I also think that not everything needs to be really acrimonious. And not everything needs to be some war, the agent and the player versus the team. Sometimes you can work together. And we have seen it pretty consistent. These holdouts have turned into hold-ins. And Brock Purdy has had a front row seat on this. A couple years ago, Nick Bosa held out. And then he got a historic amount of money. But he missed all of training camp. And when he got back, he didn't play that well. Last year, Brandon Ayuk held in. And let's face it, I don't ever remember the 49ers, of all their different administrations, ever regretting a contract so quickly. And if they could have, they gladly would have traded him this offseason. But because he's injured and makes a ton of money, no one was going to touch him. Not a soul in the league. Rightfully so. I wouldn't either if I was one of the other 31 teams. He's owed way too much money and way too many question marks about the health of his leg. But it shows you how quickly the 49ers turned on him. Because let's face it, Tim Kawakami and a bunch of people that cover the 49ers have discussed this at length. They did not look favorably on how that was handled. Because there's a point of being professional, and then there's kind of jumping that line and becoming unprofessional. And the 49ers clearly think that Brandon Ayuk and his camp acted that way. And I think if you're Brock Purdy, you've kind of seen every different element of this. Nick Bosa, who is the type player that you just, a blank check, he kind of gets to dictate the terms. Brandon Ayuk, who, listen, I'm not trying to play Monday morning quarterback. I thought it was insane for them not to trade him. They're never going to have a guy where they, in that offense under Kyle, that's going to catch 90, 100 balls. That is not how they play. So to pay a guy a premium that's going to catch between 70 and 80 balls, I thought was kind of nuts. And they ended up doing it. And I think if you're Brock Purdy, you know you're in a really good situation. You know this coach and general manager love you. You know the team really likes you. You know, I've seen this a couple years ago when the 49ers turned on Trey Lance. It wasn't just the GM and the coach doing it. The star players on the team didn't think he could play. Honestly, the basketball team in the region is going through it currently with Jonathan Kuminga. Everyone's like, Steve Kerr doesn't like him. Clearly, neither do the star players, because if they thought he could play, he would be on the court. And the 49ers, from the front office to the coaching staff to the players, they believe in this guy. And listen, is he going to get Trevor Lawrence $200 million? I wouldn't do that deal. I don't think the 49ers are comfortable doing that deal. But even if you get, quote unquote, a low-end quarterback deal, you're talking $150 million guaranteed. And if you're Brock Purdy, you have made a lot of money off the field because you play for this brand. Easily. Not even close, one of the top brands in the NFL to play for. And when they're good, you directly profit off it. It's not all equal. Brands discriminate in the NFL, right? There's a reason if you play quarterback for the Jags, if you play quarterback for the Houston Texans, you're not going to make as much when you play for the Green Bay Packers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Dallas Cowboys, the San Francisco 49ers. Dak Prescott, while he's made a lot of money on the field, he's made a ton off the field because he's played for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, in those negotiations, clearly that's never factored in. Guys like Dak give me the most money possible. And we see how that limits the team they put around him, which, listen, we can argue till we're blue in the face whether that's fair or not, but that's a reality of the business you're in. And if you're Brock Purdy, like, you want to do a good deal with the 49ers. You want to get paid, but you want them to be happy with you. Because if they're not, they will discard you very, very quickly. We have just seen their actions this offseason. They will turn on a player really, really quickly. And I think, and I give Brock Purdy credit. Now, listen, if you told me last week, do you think Brock Purdy is not going to show up? I would have said no. I would have imagined he would have showed up. So I guess I'm not shocked that he's there. But I also think that's just smart business. You want to be in business with people where there's trust on both sides. And I think we've kind of jumped the shark over the last 3 or 4 years with some of these deals and some of these acrimonious situations. Like, I appreciate some of these contracts that get done. The Eagles are great at this. They break their guys off early, everyone's happy, and there just aren't these weird situations. The Chiefs have been pretty consistent, you know, obviously with Patrick Mahomes, but the way they've treated Travis Kelce. It got a little weird with Chris Jones, and clearly they were uncomfortable with that. And the 49ers over the last couple of years, some of their situations with Trent Williams, with Nick Bosa, obviously with Ayuk, with Debo several years ago, like, it hasn't been smooth. And they don't want to go through that with Purdy. And Purdy doesn't want to go through that with them. Now, what do they ultimately meet at? The average per year is thrown out all the time. I do not care about that at all. You could tell me the average per year is $100 million. If they guaranteed him $100 million total, like that's a win. And I'm sorry, like I do think how much they paid this player in this situation really matters. And I'm not one of those people, and I've seen this thrown out that they should get rid of him, try to draft another guy. If the NFL knew that Shador Sanders was going to be as good as Brock Purdy, there is no way he would slip back past the number 2 overall pick. Like Brock Purdy has proven you can win with him as long as your team is good. It's why I've said the pressure this offseason is not as much on Brock Purdy. He's established and shown you what he is. It's on John and Kyle. Because, like the other quarterbacks in the NFC, Jalen Hurts, Jared Goff, they really benefit from playing on a loaded roster. And they're also on long term, highly paid contracts. So the 49ers have high draft picks at pick 11, and they draft high in every round. They got multiple third round picks. Like, you got to crush this draft. If you were going to do what the Rams did a couple years ago and kind of retool your roster, make it cheaper, and make it more long term cost effective, you better get the draft right. And the pressure right now on the 49ers front office is enormous. But like I said, not all things are equal. And George Kittle did not show up. Don't totally blame him. Because if all the guys on the team last year in a devastating season, they won 6 games, and going into the season, they were the favorite to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. He was one of the few that had a fantastic season. He's 31 years old. He's going in the last year of his contract. Like, it's time to give him an extension. And I don't blame him. Like, this guy laid it on the line in a season when guys were injured, guys were disappearing, and they were losing games, and he was a second-team All-Pro. And in his position, unlike wide receivers or tackles or pass rushers, he doesn't get paid a premium. But I also understand if I was him and I'm training in Nashville, like I don't really want to come back. And until you make it lucrative enough for me to come back, like you know what I stand for. You know what I bring to the table from a leadership on and off the field standpoint. So that's a situation for the 49ers that I think is a pretty easy one. You've cut all this, in their minds, trimming the fat of letting all these guys walk and not paying any of them. Like George Kittle is one of those guys, and I'm not always for giving guys third and fourth contract extensions, but the way George played last year, and especially his position, like you can give him like guaranteed $30 or $35 million, and it's not very complicated to figure out. The NBA 82 game grind is done, and now the real fun begins. The NBA playoffs are here, and it's time for the high stakes drama, clutch moments, and jaw-dropping plays. Can't wait. If you're looking to make the playoffs even more exciting, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered as an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in games all the way through the finals. Now, the time to back your favorite players and teams as they chase glory. All season long, DraftKings has been your go-to spot for NBA player props, and that doesn't stop now. Want to make your playoff experience even more intense? Try placing a bet on your favorite player's performance. Will Curry drop 30? Will LeBron drop 40 or more? It's your call. Ready to place your first bet? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, lock in your bets, and let's make the playoff run unforgettable. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Make it a playoff run to remember with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Devante Adams had some comments that he said that his agent told him that the 49ers, who were interested in Adams this offseason, wanted him at a wholesale price, not at retail prices, or basically that they were willing to pay wholesale prices. They weren't cutting retail type checks. And he laughed at it like, I'm not a wholesale player. And John Lynch came out today and denied it. And listen, the offseason does not determine your success and failure in terms of like teams that win free agency and teams that Mel Kiper, who I'm pro Mel Kiper, but part of the business is giving teams draft grades the day after Saturday happens. It's like A, C, B, F. It's like no one has any freaking clue. Not a soul out of the league or in the league. But like the 49ers, I would say for the first time in many, many years, feel like they have some negative, some a black cloud kind of around the organization in terms of positive momentum. And comments like this, like, don't necessarily make them look great. Now, John Lynch denied it. He said 100%. I've never said that. He was asked if Kyle would have said that. He laughed. He said Kyle does not talk to agents. So 100% he didn't say that. There's nothing they can really do this offseason to shut everyone up. It's just going to come this fall, and they're going to have to win games. And they're going to have to do it with a lot of new players on the roster. And listen, it's the NFL. You get new players every single year in the roster, but they're going to have a lot of turnover. And they are going to be very, very dependent on young players to have an impact immediately. And obviously, they're going to have a quarterback who, sometime between now and sometime in training camp, is going to have a new contract and have a ton of added pressure to play at a Pro Bowl level. Because it's one thing when you get to listen, I'm playing for $1 million a year. Whatever you're getting is gravy, and that's there's truth to that, right? But the moment I give you, 150, 175 million dollars guaranteed, and the biggest contract in the history of the franchise, there is a huge amount of pressure then that immediately amps up what was already there. And he is obviously one of the most polarizing players in the league. Kyle's one of the most polarizing coaches in the league. And I mean, when you are Super Bowl less and a guy like Nick Sirianni has a Super Bowl, like, and the Eagles seem loaded, the Lions seem loaded. You got Washington that's an up and coming team. You got the Rams that are going to have a ton of momentum coming in. In a weird way, the 49ers should get to fly under the radar, but we know that's not what's going to happen. So the 49ers are going to just continue to be I would say most people are going to pick against them. Well, big couple days coming up Thursday and Friday for John Lynch and company. The Titans all but confirmed what we already knew. Mike Borgonzi today said that we are sticking at one and we're all on the same page, aka we are taking Cam Ward. Uh, Listen, anytime that you go through a season with Will Levis and who I think he called a quarterback in our room, so not exactly, I don't even think there's a lock. If you told me Will Levis is traded for like a seventh round pick to another team, I'd be a little stunned if Will Levis is on the team for the Titans in 2025. My guess is he's somewhere else. I don't, and I do think they could probably ship him for like a future seventh. Like they basically give him away. But Cam Ward is going to get the keys to this franchise, and if he is just solid, I don't know if they could be a playoff team, but they could be a much more serviceable operation than they were last year, which was basically an embarrassment. Chris Ballard had some interesting comments. I would say if I'm Anthony Richardson, I better come in with basically my hair on fire. I mean, I better be just full steam ahead, off-season activities, OTAs, the meetings. I mean, every time I step into that building, I better be as locked in and focused as I've ever been in my entire life. Because Chris Ballard made a comment like his competition is Daniel Jones, and we all laugh at that. They believe in him. And Chris Ballard said, like, I believe that both quarterbacks will help us this upcoming season. Like they don't have much belief right now in Anthony Richardson. And that's what happens when you get drafted really high and you underwhelm on and off the field. I mean, the situation with him tapping out, the way he was kind of, benched, the way his teammates had to talk to him, like they're just not that high on him. And I don't blame them. How could they be? Now, do I like their contingency plan with Daniel Jones? I think it's a little insane. I think it's borderline crazy. But they did that. And listen, their head coach is not going to go down being embarrassed on offense, right? Anytime that you are an offensive quote unquote guru and your quarterback can't complete basic routes and you can't get first downs because he can't hit wheel routes or basic out routes, and you think that just an inaccurate quarterback, and Ballard's been talking about this, you can't play quarterback at a high level if you are consistently inaccurate, they will look for someone else. And they've already proven this offseason that they believe that they had to bring in competition. It's an open competition. Ballard, which I think makes people nervous, said like, me, Shane, Jim Bob, the offensive coordinator, Jim Irsay. People are like, wait, Jim Irsay's involved in the quarterback decision? I think he's just kind of playing corporate manager, like being smart. Do I think Jim Irsay is going to be the guy pulling the trigger on who's starting? I don't. I think sometimes you just have to say that out loud. But I would say that Anthony Richardson's job is very much in jeopardy. And that they're already showing by their words, because we know by their actions they weren't cool with it. By their words now, they've doubled down, and their actions of bringing in another guy. Like, he better play well. Because I think if all things are equal, they'll go with Daniel Jones. And last but not least, Peter Schrager mentioned today on ESPN, his new employer, that the Browns and the Giants are getting calls for pick 2 and 3. And what I think is so fascinating about this draft is it's viewed as like a 3-player draft, really a 2-player draft in terms of Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are big time prospects. Obviously, Ashton Genty is viewed as one of the best players in this draft, and then everything else is just a crapshoot, right? I mean, every guy, once you start moving down, like Will Campbell, people love the guy, but the short arms things make people very, very uncomfortable. I think Jalen Walker of Georgia, who, if you just throw on that Texas game in the regular season, the guy looked like Lawrence Taylor meets TJ Watt meets Miles Garrett. He was an unstoppable force. He's 6'1". I mean, if he was 6'5", he'd probably be the number 2 overall pick. But every guy, Mason Graham, he's just not that tall, which is not the end all be all, but people do like you to look the part when I'm going to draft you 3, 4, 5, right? And I think this draft, I'll be stunned if there are a lot of trades for teams trading up. I don't expect that to happen because in a draft, when there's a reason this is the first draft, more than likely, we're going to go into Thursday night without one first round trade before the start of the draft, which is unheard of. I mean, it does not happen. Typically, we have like several, but in a draft that isn't viewed as good, doesn't have the quarterback star power, uh, that's not going to take place. So I actually expect a lot of teams trying to trade back, but the problem is it takes two to tango. And if I don't love the prospects as a front office, as a GM, I'm not trading up. Why wouldn't I just wait where I am and let someone fall into my lap? So I think there's going to be a lot of teams on the horn Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning, begging teams to come up. And I think it's going to be very, very difficult to find a trade partner. I really do. Because if you are a team at pick 10, at 15, at 20, at 25, why would you? It's one thing to move a spot or two, but to do like the 20 to 10 or 15 to 8, like that is not cheap. That is not you typically pay premiums to move up 5, 8, 10 spots in the first round. Even if it's like obviously you got to pay extra usually when it's quarterbacks, but there is just a basic going rate based on the chart of moving from, and again, I'm not necessarily picking teams. I'm just using examples. 14 to 6 or 20 to 11. Like there's precedent teams that have made similar trades. And then there's just a chart of like, this is what it costs. So like, why am I going to give a second round pick, a third round pick to move up 4 or 5 spots when I can essentially get a similar group of players? All I've heard from my friends, and a lot of these guys draft in the 20s, so they're not as caught up in like Abdul Carter and the Travis Hunters. But they say the difference of the guy that's going to go somewhere between like 9 and 14 and the dude that's going to go 25 to 32, it's not very deep. Why? Because this is a draft, and I bet some of these GMs in their post draft press conferences, which they usually do, will say comments like this. We had 7 first round guys graded. We had 10 first round grades. In a good draft, usually that number's somewhere between 20 to 24. I think a couple years ago, I remember John Schneider said they had like 17. But obviously, if you have 17 first round grades on players and you draft 24th, there's a decent chance that all those guys are gone. Now, everyone boards a little different. There's a decent chance that guy's still there. But there are going to be a lot of teams drafting in the first round. They're going to draft guys that they don't feel that comfortable based on their draft grade. Not that they don't like the player, not that they don't think the player is good, but if I'm drafting at pick 13 and I only had 8 first round talents in the draft and they all went somewhere in the top 12, I then am drafting a guy and paying him the 13th overall based on the wage scale, but I think I'm getting a second round player. So that's what makes drafts like this. And again, none of this determines how good these guys will be. There are going to be a ton of guys in the top 12 picks that will not get their fifth year option picked up. Just like there are going to be several guys in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s that will go on to be Pro Bowl high level starters. But we don't have any of that information. So it's all based on how they were as a prospect, right? So Cam Ward could be better than every quarterback in last year's draft. That can happen, right? But right now, if you polled every team in the league, I saw Schefter put out something today. He said one team, and it's easy to do when you're like the Bills, and I'm not saying they were the team that told him this, do not have a first round grade on any of the quarterbacks, on any of them. And obviously that includes Cam Ward. So anytime you have these situations, there is going to be huge discrepancies team to team. That also means you are going to see players, like based on the mock drafts, there are going to be some players that are going to be locks to go relatively high, top 12, right? We know the top couple guys, but Will Campbell, a Mason Graham, whoever. But all of a sudden, like Will Johnson, he might be there at pick 28, where before the season, people thought he was like a top 10 pick. And all of a sudden, it's like, wait, he went to the Lions, right? Or he went to the Rams. So you got to be very careful in years like this with mock drafts because you get very used to certain players going at certain levels. And then the draft comes, and all of a sudden, the eighth pick is some guy that you haven't really heard of or consistently seen. Like you've seen him mocked in the 20s, and all of a sudden he goes eight. That is going to happen. And it's simply because in a draft like this, the grades are going to be all over the freaking map when it comes to GMs, when it comes to front offices, and more specifically when these coaches get involved. Because, like it or not, if you're the general manager, the scouting departments, coaches, the highest paid guy in your front office / coaching staff is the head coach. There is not, I would say Howie is probably the only guy right now, as of April 22nd, that makes more than his head coach. But if Sirianni gets a contract extension, he is going to be making more. Now, that's not going to change the internal dynamic. But if you just go around, like Les Snead, really high level GM, he doesn't make even close to what Sean McVay makes. John Lynch, a lot of success as a GM. Kyle Shanahan makes double what the guy makes. So you get in these situations that if the coach really wants something, and sometimes it's not just him, it's like his assistant coaches, quarterback coach, his coordinators, his D-line coach. Those are his scouts, right? Those are the guys he leans on for their opinions, and they have a lot of sway this time of year. So buckle up because this thing's about to get crazy.